this is a place that actually won't fully heal. Process the pain, extract the hurt, the emotions, the lessons. You will self-sabotage, re-wound yourself. Great powers, great gifts are being born inside of you, are being discovered and rediscovered. It's your karmic wound. It's the wound that you cannot heal in this lifetime. It is your greatest gift that you have to offer the world. Oh my God, this is going to be one of the best, one of the deepest videos you have ever seen on my channel, turning the poison into the medicine with Chiron. I can't wait to go into this deep, deep subject with you, and you can count on me to get deep. The videos I found on this subject were fairly surface. I thought they were super fast and quick, and I really put my heart and soul into this video for you, into this content to share with you in a very profound way to hopefully give you a breakthrough. So stay to the end, because I'm going to give you 6 important things that you can do to start your healing journey, removing the pain from your wounds through understanding the purpose of Chiron in your chart. In this video, I'm going to talk about what Chiron really means in your chart. So Chiron is your fated wound in your life. Your soul chose it, but you probably don't remember making this contract, but you did. Now, why would you do something like that? Because it will become, hopefully, the healing medicine in your life that will eventually lead to your healed self, your personal highest evolution of yourself, and then the greatest gift you can give back to the universe, the people in your life, the animals that you love, your plants, your loved ones, your friends, humanity, and the world, planet Earth, Mother Earth herself. First, you need to realize that you will either be born with this wound or these wounds to manage and navigate, or you will receive them while you are here on Earth. And it will happen because you agreed to becoming a human and living a human life here on Earth. Now, this wound or this set of wounds, this theme of wounds, are going to travel with you from lifetime to lifetime. They will eventually, I'll show you how, become your greatest teacher. That is if you're willing to learn from it. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean learning from your wounds? How do I make my wound my medicine? If you can start to process the pain from your wound, extract the pain from the wound, extract the hurt, the emotions, the lessons, the courage that it takes to be real about your wound and authentic around your wound. If you can eventually surrender to it a little bit and learn the art of detachment, let go of, or begin to let go of identifying yourself as the wound, merging so deeply with the wound that your identity becomes it, and becoming one with the wound. So if you can do less of that, or learning how to no longer have the wound describe you. Learning how to let go of the ego battle, the will and the fight around this thing that has wounded you. And ultimately, this is key. This is the place where we have to learn how to forgive those who betrayed you and release the shame and the frustration and learn how to step into forgiveness, the forgiveness of the betrayer, whether it was another person, God, yourself, your body, your best friend, your lover, your husband, your wife, your partner. This is where we start on the wiser path of forgiveness. It is not easy work. We're going to go into it a little bit deeper, but I wanted to give you the overview. So today you're going to get to learn what Chiron means in your astrology chart. And we all have Chiron somewhere, and we all have different experiences, even if we have the same Chiron. And I'm going to do a whole Chiron series. So I want you to watch my Chiron through the houses video and my other Chiron videos that I'll stick into this playlist. I'm building it now because I want you to truly understand the significance and the importance of Chiron in your chart. Now, Chiron has a lot of tricks to it, and I really want you to understand the tricks. And Chiron is also a different kind of wound than the Pluto wound. And I hope that you've seen my whole Pluto playlist. And I am going to do a video, probably for my members, around what is the difference between the Chiron wound and the Pluto wound. So if you're not a member, consider being a member so you can see and learn with me even deeper in all of my behind the scenes videos. And it's a great way to support the work here on the channel. And just know that I really love and cherish my supporters. So hit the join button and come join us. It puts 10 cents in my pocket a day, and I am so grateful. But let's talk about this. Here's one of the tricks, okay, with Chiron, and this is really important. The goal is not to heal Chiron's wound. Now, why is that? Because this is a place in your soul that actually won't fully heal. It is a wound that cannot be healed, but it can be worked with for the good of your soul's evolution, and you can grow enough to get the elixir from the wound. Now, I could spend 8 hours on the subject of the magic inside Chiron, and I would love to do that. And these videos are going to be a little bit long. And it will be especially long when I do my video of Chiron through the houses. I want to tell you that if you want to learn about the magic of Chiron in depth and in all the ways that you can study Chiron, I will be doing a full day of Chiron in my Seattle workshop and retreat, which I'm so excited about, on May 16th through the 19th, 2024. And I'm going to spend an entire day on Chiron and talking about how it operates in your specific chart. So if you're fascinated with this subject, consider coming to my retreat, my workshop right here in Seattle, Washington, USA. And I know this workshop is going to sell out. I will put the tickets on sale on October 31st. So mark your calendars for that day so you can go get yours just as soon as possible. And you can also do payments. So the reason why I'm putting it on sale so early is so people who need a payment plan can get one, and they can pay just a tiny bit per month. So it makes it a little bit affordable for you. So one thing I want to say is in this video, I am not going to go deep into the mythology of Chiron, but I did actually find a lot of information on Chiron's mythology and a lot of videos that talk about the mythology of Chiron that are really, really good. So seek those out on a different channel. And I might do one of those later. But in this video, I wanted to stick to the practical, pragmatic meaning of Chiron in your life and how you can work with your chironic wound to find the medicine and start to heal with it. Chiron can wound you numerous times in a lifetime. And it usually represents a theme, like stealing your voice for you to find your voice, like stealing your loved one so you learn how to love more deeply, disfiguring you so you can cultivate a different concept of self, love, and beauty. You can receive a physical, an emotional, or a mental wound from Chiron, but it can also be, like Pluto, a psychological wound. Whatever it is, it's going to require that you merge with it, that you wrestle with it, that you understand it, that you grow compassion for yourself around this wound. And then eventually you're going to use it as a tool to transform that pain into power for yourselves and in truth, mostly for others. In order for you to find your wound in the natal chart, you just have to go look at what sign Chiron is in your gorgeous natal chart. Hopefully you guys all have one from my shop. You can find it in the link in the notes below, or just go to soulnavigation.com and click on shop and go buy your gorgeous natal chart. That's another great way that you can support the channel. And if you have your birth time, then you can also take note of what house that it's in. And that is a whole nother story. The sign and the house together are a very big part of the story, but that is not the entire story. We'll get into that later. And Chiron's wound and Chiron's work in your own life can be hidden. It can be hidden for a long, long time. And the wounds can also be so severely painful that many people that I have given readings to, I have found don't even understand their Chiron. They're in denial, or they've escaped it, or they're just protecting themselves from even seeing it, or they're wearing blinders, or they're just so removed and disconnected from their wound because it's just too painful. Truthfully, mostly people are blaming someone or something else for this great wound that they have experienced in this lifetime. And so they're just living in the victimization of the horrible thing that happened to them. And I don't blame anybody. If that's right where you're at, then that's where you need to be at. And that is a part of the process. I'm going to give you some steps on how to really deal with Chiron in your chart in this video. And I hope that it will help you. At the beginning of the Chiron journey, it's really quite normal to just be angry, pissed off, damaged, mean, nasty, just paralyzed, immobilized, just so fed up. That's actually what happened to Chiron. There's at first this fight back, this I am not going to surrender at first. I will tell you, then the wound can make you feel both alienated and overwhelmed. This thing that we struggle with so much, this wound, this hurt, this pain, this agony can be so unbearable that we have sometimes, some of us have just pushed it away to keep it locked in our subconscious where we don't have to see it, where we don't have to deal with it, but it's still in there, right? I want to take a moment here and tell you something really personal. My Chiron in my chart is enormous. It is so big, interacting with almost every single planet in my chart. And it is in a pretty perilous place because it's conjunct Saturn. Anyways, I've shared this with my members in my behind the scenes members only videos. I've shared a portion of this story with them, but I'm going to share it with you right now. And I want to tell you one personal experience that I've had with my Chiron and my Chiron journey. And I've had many, and I'm sure I'm not done with my Chiron work. Nobody ever is, right? But after taking inventory of all of my woundings over my life so far, my husband told me, he's turned to me and said to me, "How are you even alive, Meredith? Most people couldn't live through one of those, let alone all of those." And there's a magic in Chiron. I promise you that. And that's why I want to share this with you. So I have Chiron in the 8th house. And the 8th house is asking us to transform ourselves. And Chiron did that by creating a wound where I would become severely disfigured and almost die. You cannot see this wound on the screen right here, but trust me, it's there. So when I was 12 years old, I put out a grease fire with water. It exploded and the hot grease was just poured down the front of my body until the skin melted off my arms and my legs. The day before that, all my dreams had come true. I had the best day of my life because I was one of 12 girls that made the prom line for the next year, which was going to be junior high and 7th grade. So the prom line is like the dance line today. It literally was the best day of my life, only to have the next day be what hell feels like through the lens of the 8th house, to feel what death feels like, and then to come back from it. The story unfolds, but it is gross, it is painful, it is hard, it is also disgusting. Quite frankly, it's unbearable, and I don't think I can even tell about it on YouTube fully. But let me just say, at that time in my life as a 12-year-old, on that day, death seemed more favorable than life. That is for sure. I feel blessed to have found the tools that help me process that wound and get that elixir out of the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the psychological wound that it festered and turned into, and eventually find a great medicine inside of it. I was taught over 1,000 lessons through this particular wound. I had to forgive God for giving me the worst day of my life after I had the very best day of my life. I was so mad at that for so long. I thought that that was exceptionally cruel to do, especially to a 12-year-old. I had to forgive my mom for not teaching me that you don't put a grease fire out with water. I had to forgive my dad for living on the other side of the world and not being right there because he lived in Saudi Arabia at the time. I had to forgive my body for not cooperating with my ability to walk and my desire to dance. I had to forgive my PE teacher, who was my coach, who told me that I wasn't allowed to wear the bandage on my leg, and I had to reveal what was underneath the bandage. And if I didn't take the bandage off, I wouldn't be a part of the team. And most of all, I had to forgive myself for my own stupidity. My Chiron wound, like a good 8th house Chiron, stole myself from myself. So I had thought. But in fact, and in reality, I learned years later that it actually gave me a much, much deeper relationship to myself, into myself. Turned out to be a journey into my soul, a journey that would become a very spiritual journey, which ironically, I'm sitting here now teaching about. Isn't life a giant paradox? So I don't tell this story for you to just listen to my wound, but I tell this story as an example of the Chironic journey. So Chiron, by sign, by house, by dispositor, which is the ruler of your Chiron, and by aspect in the horoscope, symbolizes actually, yes, the wound. Yes, the wound. But a great gift that one has inside of themselves, but it is usually tapped into, revealed, and developed through a deep suffering or a wound. But the caveat is you must go through the wound to get the gift. You don't just get the gift without experiencing the wound first. I want to give you the actual steps that you need to take in order to make medicine from the wound. Now, with Chiron, how to work with it in a pragmatic way. If you're still in the pain, that's okay. You can start the process of healing your wound. And in time, there's usually a deep transformation around this wound, as we have mentioned. Chiron encourages us to heal so that we can take that healing and help the healing in others. And that is actually the medicine. That part is the medicine. So there are 3 critical things that I want you to know about Chiron. First, find your pain. This is your wound, and get real about what the wound is. Using my example. Yes, the burns were extremely painful. Physical pain. They hurt. They were awful. It was just terrible what I had to do to nurture the physical wounds and heal the physical wounds. But the psychological wound around feeling myself being stolen, my identity being gone, me not knowing any longer even who I was or who I could be, if now I'm even worth having around because I'm a big burden and because I had no joy in my heart. I had no laughter in my life. My joy was gone. My independence was gone. My identity was no longer. I had nothing of value, so I felt at the time to give to anyone. And so the psychological and the emotional parts eclipsed the physical wound. That is the part that truly needs the healing. You have to figure out how will you heal that part. What are your tools going to be? It could be dream journaling. It could be a counselor. This is important because if you do not start the healing journey and you just suppress all of it, then this will not become medicine. This actually becomes Chiron's poisonous arrow. And this is also how you will self-sabotage, re-wound yourself, and how you will become a wounder of other people if your pain is not processed. And if you can start to process your pain, your healing journey will morph into medicine, and then you become a healer. Chiron is tricky. If you don't heal it, it will be how you wound yourself over and over and over and over. And eventually it will be exactly how you hurt other people. Now, it's not that I'm going to go burn somebody. It's that my psychological and emotional insecurities will create a rigidity in me, possibly a jealousy that other people get to do things that I don't get to do. It will create an envy. It will create a self-victimization, and hurt people hurt people. Now, not everyone can take their wound and heal it and turn into a guru and have shamanic healing powers, bibbity bobbity boo. Yeah. It works through developing a deeper connection to spirit. It is a spiritual wound. It is a wound that is attached to your karmic journey, to the cosmos, to the place that you came from, to the contract that you incarnated into, and it requires connection to spirit. But you can start with just trying to get honest and process the pain that lives inside of yourself. It's worth telling you this one more time. The wound can manifest in medicine or in poison. And it's in our relationship to that wound, to the suffering that that wound generates, that determines if it is going to be healing or toxic. So what relationship to your wound do you choose? The objective of life is not to avoid being wounded, because you can't do that. It is to decide how you will manage and interrelate to your wounds. I cannot undo getting burned at 12 years old, but the way in which I deal with that wound will produce either the toxicity or the medicine that I need for my soul's evolution. And also, let me tell you one more thing, it can produce both. So it takes 50 to 51 years for Chiron to go through all of the signs. And it is a generational planet, a generational marker. That is why, if you know your birth time, you can know the house. And the aspects and the dispositor or the ruler of Chiron are so important. It's considered half a comet and half an asteroid. Isn't that funny? But it is a centaur body, half man, half horse. So everyone you were in class with basically had the same Chiron. So everybody born in the same year has the same Chiron. But your wound is different because of the aspects it makes to other planets, what it's conjunct, square, what is it doing to your ascendant, your midheaven, right? What house is it in, the dispositor. So that's what makes it very unique. And that's what we're going to look at when I do my full one-day Chiron workshop. It's going to be so exciting. So Chiron takes approximately 4 years in each sign, but its orbit is really unique and really different. And so there are more Aries and Pisces Chiron people, and there's fewer Virgo Libra Chiron people, because Chiron spends between 7 and 8 years in Aries and Pisces and only 1 to 2 years in Virgo and Libra. So it's located between Saturn and Uranus, and it has this very eccentric orbit. And sometimes it goes inside Saturn, and then sometimes it goes outside of Uranus. And so then it's between Uranus and Neptune. So when it was first discovered, it was considered a minor planet. And then they realized it as a bit more of a comet. Now it's kind of a planet comet. It is so critical and so important. And I'll just tell you, there's not a lot written about Chiron. It is hard to find really deep, meaningful work on Chiron. Now, I have 2 books. If you're really interested, buy them both in my Amazon store. They're phenomenal, by Barbara Hand-Clow and Melanie Reinhardt. I met Melanie when I studied astrology at Exeter College at Oxford University in England, and I had a wonderful evening with her. And I also took her class on Chiron, and she is brilliant. And Barbara Hand-Clow's work on it is very, very interesting and a little bit different and unique. So you can find both those books in my astrology must-read books in my Amazon store. And if you're not friends with me on Instagram, be friends with me on Instagram, because I have my link tree there and I have links to everything. When you're about 50 years old, you're going to have your Chiron return. And that is a whole nother video if you guys want me to do. By then, I guess I want to ask you, do you still have wounds? Are you still in the pain of your wounds, or are you on the healing journey of your wounds? Where are you at in the process? And by the way, there is no judgment, because you could have new wounds to heal, or you could just now be having the wisdom to heal those really horrible wounds. So I'm going to save Chiron returns for my workshop or another video. That is a huge subject, and I wish I had the time to talk about it right now. I want you to know that the goal is definitely not to get rid of the wound, because you cannot really get rid of your Chiron wounds, but your wound will shape that vulnerable part in you. And it does sort of stay raw and exposed and vulnerable all the time. There's a humility that is grown from this wound. You're also going to have lifetime after lifetime after lifetime with this wound, or a version of this wound. It's kind of an esoteric spiritual wound that we're carrying through multiple lifetimes and many incarnations. That is the depth of this wound that we are talking about. Just by being with this wound, you are developing a spiritual wisdom and an emotional and psychological and maybe even a physical strength is being fortified inside of you. By facing the depths of the pain and the suffering of the Chiron wound, great powers, great gifts are being born inside of you, are being discovered and rediscovered. You already have those gifts inside of you, but this wound sort of pops them forward. And it's through this healing journey that we do find our greatest capacity to heal. And eventually, after we heal ourselves, it is an enormous, perhaps the greatest gift that we can give to others. And it's giving the gifts of love and compassion, empathy, and wisdom. Whatever spiritual lessons have grown from the source of this wound, it is the greatest gift that you can give to another, and how you will contribute to the healing of this world. Do you know the story of Elizabeth Smart, who was kidnapped, gorgeous, beautiful girl from Utah, 14 years old, snatched out of her bed? She was forced to live as a bride and sex slave to some crazy man for 9 months. I think it was in the wilderness. And now she is an advocate. She is amazing. Her name is Elizabeth Smart, and I really recommend that you read her biography, learn about her. She is so beyond inspiring. There's so many great examples of the healing power of chironic wounds. Another incredible example is Malala, who escaped the Taliban and demanded that girls have a right for an education. She also is a great representation of the chironic wound. So I want to say that oftentimes we feel like we want to master our wounds in some way, right? Through lots of our own healing work and education. And we like to begin to make pragmatic meaning of our wounds, make sense of our wounds so we can just finish it up, grieve it, and move on, right? And that's how therapy kind of talks to us. But that doesn't always work with chironic wounds. I think that works more with Pluto wounds. I think about a Chiron wound kind of like a parent who has lost a child. I do not think a parent that has lost a child will ever heal from that wound. I don't think it is possible to heal from that wound, to grieve, finish it up, and move on. It's not possible. That's the kind of wound chironic wounds are. I don't want you to think that you're going to cure this, that you're going to grieve it and move on. What I want to share with you is, I got to get closer to you. It's not about learning how to cure it, but it is about learning how to care for it. How to care for your wound, not how to cure it, but how do you take care of it? And when you learn how to have a relationship caring for your wound, you actually learn how to transform it. And you will transform the poisonous anger, the angry toxicity, into wise medicine. The only way for your wound to be full of life-giving energy is to be full of grace. It has to be transformed from the inside out. There is no remedy. There is no man or partner or woman that can validate my scars, my burns, and make me feel good about me, right? It's an inside job. It has to be transformed from the inside out, not the outside in. Validation isn't really going to do the trick. Oh, it'll make me feel good for 65 seconds. You have to have a relationship with your shadow side in order to nurture your wound and care for it and tend to it. And the chironic journey is asking you to be bold. It's asking you to face your shadow and all the pain of the wound and nurture it and care for it and slowly and sweetly and deeply be with it and find the wisdom through grace, the grace of forgiveness, so you can share that piece of you when you move through it with humanity. You're going to have to face probably things like humiliation, loneliness, alienation, brokenness, fragility, vulnerability, low self-worth, degradation, and feelings of deep inadequacy. Those are the things that Chiron will bring to us. And then you need to learn how to rise above those issues by going through them, by recognizing the wound is not us. I am not the scars on my body. I am the soul that this body is on loan to. And I do the best with this body that I have. We have to recognize that the wound is not us. You are not homeless. You are unhoused. You are without a house. You are not homeless. Your wound is not your identity. It is only an experience. I will say that again. Your wound is not your identity. It is only an experience. It's not there to escape. It is there to have a relationship with, but one of healing, not one of poisoning. What is also tricky about Chiron, really interesting, is Chiron is actually where we eventually can teach other people really, really well. We're masterful at the lesson for other people, but not so much for ourselves. So we can teach other people how to take the medicine, but we're not always that great with taking it ourselves. So, hey, you really shouldn't eat the cheesecake while I go and eat the cheesecake, right? Hey, those donuts are really not good for you while I go and have a donut, right? There's a little bit of a hypocrisy. There's a little bit of a duality that we'll play with our Chiron until you no longer do. But wherever you have Chiron, you have some sort of self-mastery around this personal subject because you have had lifetimes of experience already that's in your subconscious around this kind of wound. So you have this master advice to give to others with ease, and you can see it easily from afar, but your own vulnerability makes it really hard for you to see it in your own life or give you the advice that you're giving to others to yourself. Oh, you need to love yourself before you can love other people. Well, are you loving you? Chiron can be a really difficult place for you to give that same kind of energy that you have for other people to yourself. And you can just pass out all the love tickets and all the support and, oh my gosh, I love you, you're beautiful, you're great, but do you feel that about you, right? It's time to get really honest with yourself. Now, Chiron is not impossible to give to yourself, but it is difficult. It will take time, and it is where you're going to need to practice. So right now, I'm going to give you 6 different things to help you process your own Chiron wound and help you produce its own medicine. But a few things need to happen in order for the wound to be experienced as a gift. So turning the poison into medicine. First, you need to have a wound. So without a wound, you've got nothing to heal. So if you feel like you don't have a wound, you have to get honest about what your wound is. That's the first step. Now, maybe you just feel that you're perfectly healed and you don't have this karmic wound, and that's great. And you can turn this video off and you can go watch my Venus series. I know a lot of people are not even wanting to look at this part of their life. And some of us can't even see how we have been wounded. Some are in denial that they even have one. And I get that. I really, really get that. I have somebody very close in my life where I was like, what are your wounds? And he was like, I don't know. I don't know. I'm like, well, are your parents alive? No, my dad died when I was young. Oh, tell me about that. All of a sudden these wounds started coming out. He's like, oh yeah, I guess that really did hurt. And I guess that was kind of awful. Yeah, I guess he almost killed me. You're right. Yeah, I guess I escaped something really hard, right? And so sometimes people just haven't had honest conversations with themselves or with other people. Nobody's been inquisitive about what are your wounds. So what is your wound? And if you want to share what one of your wounds is, like I shared with you, you don't have to pick the worst one. I didn't pick my worst one. I just picked one that I could speak of. And if you want to share one in the comments, this community is so loving and so kind and so supportive. I know that you will find a lot of love and support in the comments because such good people are truly attracted to this channel. It is very, very, very rare, if ever, that there's somebody god awful on this channel. The people here are so kind and so loving. And if somebody does leave their wound on here, I encourage you to give them some support and talk to them. And if you know astrology, talk to them a little bit about their astrology. Let's build a soul tribe and a soul community that really helps people. Okay, number 2, you need to accept the wound and quit proving that your side of the story is right or fighting with them to get your point across, or stop yelling about how hurt you are. And you need to quit telling the people who hurt you what idiots they are, how stupid they are. Quit trying to control the narrative because the narrative is actually spiritual. I didn't know that being burned at 12 years old was part of a spiritual contract when it happened. I didn't know that. I thought it was a stupid accident. Start moving through the anger so you can sit in the acceptance of what happened. Start seeing it as a spiritual story, and you might not know what the whole story is. I certainly didn't understand the story. It took me decades. Literally decades of my life to understand that story that I told you about. It wasn't a day. It wasn't a week. It wasn't a month. It was decades. I'm 56 years old now. It took decades. Number 3, be willing to nurture that part of you that was hurt by leaning into you and holding yourself in love and compassion and empathy. And one of the ways you can do that is, you can give yourself a hug like this, but make yourself comfortable. Make a tea, eat a meal that you love, be by a crackling fire, lay in the warm sun. Make yourself comfortable, swing in the hammock. That's how you do self-care, self-love. Let me give you an example. I'm going to give you a little visual. Let's say you saw a little puppy on the street and it was abandoned and it was wounded and it was fearful and it was scared and it was insecure and someone left it. And how would you approach that little puppy? How would you hold it? How would you lure it to you? How would you talk to it? How would you take care of it? What would you do? And that moment that you saw that little wounded puppy, would you be on a screaming, angry, mad, just indignant rage for finding who did this, and I'm gonna get him, and who's the monster? And maybe that would be more important to you than luring the puppy to you and rescuing the puppy. Or in that moment, would you tend to the life and the well-being of the wounded little puppy? And would you try to bring back some semblance of happiness or okayness, just okayness, to that little hurt puppy in that particular minute in time? Would you try to comfort it, or would you go looking for the monster that you won't ever find? In that particular moment in time, does it truly help the puppy to go search for the cruel monster, or does it help the puppy to care for it? I know there's instincts to go get the monster, but that puppy, that wound in that puppy, my sweet friend who's listening to this now, is you. And this is the story of your chironic journey. The ego wound wants justice, wants effing justice. And thank God we all have egos, because justice needs to be served and lessons need to be taught and punishments are critical. That's in the right time. And that's your Saturn-Pluto story. That is Saturn-Pluto. But the Chiron part of your story is taking the deep medicinal, emotional, psychological, and spiritual care of yourself to help heal you by holding you. Remember that you are not the wound. That puppy is wounded. That puppy is not the wound. Those wounds are not the puppy. The puppy has those wounds. Those wounds are just a lesson to take you to a deeper spiritual place. Number 4, use a tool, or go see a therapist, or talk to a friend, or get the help, whatever, however, dream journal, astrology, whatever, to accept yourself, your wounds, your flaws, your discomforts, your fragility, your weaknesses, your fears, all of the ugly bits. I've got plenty of them. When you can accept your hurts with deep, loving care and genuinely sort through them with a depth of feeling and enormous thoughtfulness, with therapy, with astrology, with sound bowls, with meditation, yoga, whatever you need to do to just loosen up your grip of anger, right? You will start to reprogram the magnetic quality of that wound. That wound is magnetic. And now you will start to not be as attracted to choosing that wounding pattern any longer. I will tell you that it is not possible that I will be burned by my own doing by a grease fire ever again. It's not possible. I am magnetically repelling that wound. Yes, it's not happening again. Number 5, it's kind of the same, but it's make friends with this wound and even alleviate the suffering that we put our own selves through by reliving it. Don't relive it. Accept what happened. Don't relive the wound. Don't repeat the wound in your head. Don't see the wound again. Tend to where you're at right now, because you are not who you were when you were wounded. I'm not that 12-year-old little girl anymore. I've had 50 million experiences since then. I am not that person anymore. So don't relive that moment. Rewatch it, re-see it. Tend to how it shows up in me now. right? Tend to the evolution of yourself. You don't replay that wound in your head over and over and over. Tend to wherever you're at in the process of your own life right now with that wound. Extract the lessons and the wisdom. What do you think Spirit was trying to teach you? It's usually the opposite thing of what you got. So if you got an abusive parent who didn't love you right, you're being taught how to love right. If you got a parent that told you to shut up and your opinions weren't important, the lesson there is to learn how to not shut up and to know that what you're saying is important, to find your own voice. If you got stuck in a dependent, abusive relationship that you no longer want to be in, the lesson is to become independent. The sixth thing that I want to tell you, number 6, is the Chiron wound is a journey of wisdom. That's why it takes 50 years for it to return to you. And you cannot have wisdom, unfortunately, before you have had deep, painful experiences to sort through in your life. Wisdom is not something that you can learn from a book. You can be smart from a book. You can grow intelligence from a book. But wisdom comes from a plethora of experiences. And the woundings deepen this wisdom. It's like the woundings lock the wisdom in. And wisdom is exciting because it lives in you eternally. Intelligence does not. Being smart does not stay with you necessarily forever. You can be the smartest kid in 5th grade. I know this really, really smart person who was smart all throughout school, and they are really not very bright in the real world as a 50-year-old adult. Chiron's medicine is wisdom. And that's why your Chiron journey is going to be so profound, because this is where you will actually see wisdom in action. And at a certain point, you're going to have no choice. You will either give up or you will set up your life in a way that reflects the knowledge and the wisdom that's been learned so that it can be shared with other people. And once you are wise, guess what? No one can take your wisdom away from you. It lives eternally in your soul. It's not like money, something that can be taken from you. Wisdom transcends all things, and it allows you to give your greatest gift that Spirit bestowed upon you before you even incarnated. And it actually allows you to help heal humanity. And if that's not your greatest gift, I don't know what is. So let's all try to do our healing journey through the power of Chiron, and let's make some medicine out of our wounds. I hope you liked this video. I hope so much that it helps you, inspires you, and empowers you. My next video is going to be Chiron through the houses. Pray I get through the whole thing. It is big. I hope you will come watch it, and I hope that you will come learn with me in person in May 2024 right here in Seattle, and come learn more about Chiron with me. One more thing I forgot to say. I have an incredible, it's simple, short and sweet. I have a Chiron plus all 4 asteroids report in my shop, and you can go get it if you want to know just right now more about your Chiron. It's not real long, it's super inexpensive, but I do have my simple Chiron plus 4 asteroids report in the shop, so go grab it. And now, signing off from Seattle. Take good care.